The clock is ticking on December 6th, and what's about to unfold could reshape how millions receive their monthly benefits. Right now, there's a critical review happening that most people haven't heard about yet, one that directly impacts the 943 SSI payment and the average 1,537 SSD. I check that over 15 million Americans depend on to cover rent, medications, and daily necessities. This isn't another rumor or clickbait story. Federal policy adjustments are being evaluated this week that could accelerate payment schedules, modify eligibility verification processes, and even change how cost of living calculations are applied moving forward. The $3,000 figure isn't random. It represents the combined annual impact these potential shifts could have on beneficiaries when you factor in timing changes, potential back payments, and adjusted calculation methods. What makes December 6th so significant? It's the date when key administrative reviews conclude and decisions get finalized before the January payment cycle begins. If you're currently receiving SSI or SSDI, or you have loved ones who do, the next few minutes could help you understand exactly what's at stake and what actions you might need to take before year-end. Let me break down exactly what's happening right now and why December 6th has become such a pivotal date for anyone receiving disability or supplemental security benefits. You see, most people think that once they start getting their monthly checks, everything just runs on autopilot forever, but that's not quite how the system works behind the scenes. The Social Security Administration operates on quarterly review cycles, and we're right in the middle of one of the most significant evaluation periods we've seen in years. This particular review isn't just about routine maintenance or small adjustments. It's about addressing some fundamental issues that have been building up in the system for months. So, what exactly is being reviewed on December 6th? Well, first and foremost, the administration is looking at payment distribution schedules. You might have noticed over the past few months that there have been some inconsistencies with when benefits hit bank accounts. Some people are getting their deposits on the expected dates, while others are seeing delays of 1, 2, or even 3 business days. This might not sound like a huge deal to someone with multiple income sources, but when you're living on a fixed income and you've timed your bill payments down to the exact day, even a 24-hour delay can trigger late fees, overdraft charges, and a cascade of financial stress that takes weeks to recover from. The administration has acknowledged these timing issues, and part of what's being examined this week is whether to implement what they're calling an accelerated payment protocol. Now, this is where things get really interesting because an accelerated protocol doesn't just mean fixing the delays. It could actually mean that certain beneficiaries start receiving their payments earlier in the month than they currently do. The reasoning behind this is pretty straightforward when you think about it. The current system was designed decades ago when paper checks were the norm and mail delivery times had to be factored into everything. But now that over 90% of beneficiaries receive direct deposits, there's really no logistical reason to stagger payments across multiple weeks the way the system currently does. But here's where the $3,000 figure starts to make more sense. If you're currently receiving benefits and the payment schedule shifts, there could be a transition month where you receive what amounts to a partial double payment. Let me explain how this could work in practical terms. Let's say you normally receive your SSDI payment on the third Wednesday of every month, and that's when you've structured all your financial obligations around. If the new system goes into effect and your payment date shifts to the first of the month, there would need to be a bridging payment to cover the gap between the old schedule and the new one. For someone receiving the average SSDI payment of around $1,537, this transition could result in receiving close to $3,000 in a single month, your regular payment plus the adjustment payment to align you with the new schedule. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds too good to be true, and I completely understand that skepticism because we've all been burned by misleading information before. But this isn't speculation or wishful thinking. This is based on actual policy proposals that have been circulating within the Social Security Administration since October. The challenge the administration faces is that they can't just flip a switch and change everyone's payment date overnight. There are banking systems to coordinate with, state agencies that administer supplemental programs that need to adjust their own schedules, and literally millions of beneficiaries who need clear communication about when to expect their money. That's why December 6th matters so much. It's the deadline the administration has set internally to finalize whether this transition will happen in January or if it needs to be pushed back to a later date. Beyond the payment schedule changes, there's another component of this review that deserves your attention, and that's the eligibility verification process. Right now, the Social Security Administration requires beneficiaries to report changes in income, living situations, and medical conditions, but the system for processing these reports has been overwhelmed. There's currently a backlog of over 2 million cases where beneficiaries have reported changes, but those changes haven't been processed yet. This creates a really problematic situation because some people might be receiving more than they're entitled to based on their current circumstances, while others might actually be entitled to more but aren't receiving it because their updated information hasn't been reviewed. The December 6th review includes a proposal to implement an automated verification system that would cross-reference Social Security data with information from the IRS, state disability agencies, and healthcare providers. The goal is to catch discrepancies in real time rather than discovering them months or years later during manual audits. For beneficiaries, this could be both good news and potentially concerning news depending on your specific situation. If you're someone who has been meticulously reporting every change and you're actually entitled to a higher benefit than you're currently receiving, this automated system could identify that and result in back payments. On the flip side, if there are unreported changes in your file, the system could flag your account for review, which might temporarily hold up your payments while everything gets sorted out. This is why it's absolutely critical to make sure your information with the Social Security Administration is completely up to date before this new system potentially goes live. I'm talking about going through your records and verifying that they have your current address, your current banking information, any changes in your household composition, and accurate records of any work activity if you're receiving SSDI. A lot of people assume that because government agencies can share information with each other, the Social Security Administration automatically knows about every change in your life, but that's not how it works. Different agencies have different databases, and information doesn't always flow seamlessly between them. Taking the initiative to update your information proactively can save you from headaches down the road. Another aspect of the December 6th review that's getting less attention but could have significant impact is the evaluation of cost of living adjustment calculations. Now, we already know what the COLA is for 2025. It's been announced at 2.5%. That's not changing. But what's being reviewed is whether the formula used to calculate future COLAs accurately reflects the expenses that beneficiaries actually face. There's been growing recognition that the current formula, which is based on the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, doesn't really capture the spending patterns of retirees and people with disabilities. These populations spend a much higher percentage of their income on healthcare and housing than the average worker does, and both of those categories have been experiencing inflation rates well above the general CPI. The proposal under review would maintain the current COLA calculation for now, but would initiate a pilot program to track a different set of expenses specifically for beneficiaries. This data would then be used to potentially modify the formula used for calculating the 2026 COLA and beyond. If this pilot program moves forward and eventually leads to a formula change, it could result in larger annual increases than what we've been seeing under the current system. For someone receiving benefits for 10 or 15 more years, even a half percentage point difference in the annual COLA compounds into thousands of dollars over time. That's money that could mean the difference between just scraping by and actually having a small cushion for emergencies. Now let's talk about what you should actually be doing right now while all of this is being decided. First and most importantly, if you haven't logged into your My Social Security account recently, today is the day to do that. Go to the Social Security Administration website, access your account, and review all of your information for accuracy. Check that your mailing address is correct, verify that your direct deposit information is current, and review your payment history to make sure you're receiving the correct amount based on your circumstances. If you spot any discrepancies, you need to report them immediately, not next week or next month. With this major review happening, there's a real possibility that accounts with unresolved issues could get caught up in administrative holds while everything gets sorted out. Second, if you're receiving SSI and you have any assets or income sources, make sure those are accurately reported. SSI is a needs-based program with strict income and asset limits, and the new automated verification system is going to be specifically looking for discrepancies in these areas. I've talked to people who have a couple $1,000s in a savings account that they forgot to report, or who have a part-time job that brings in $100 a month that they didn't think was significant enough to mention. Under the current system, these kinds of things might go unnoticed for a long time, but under an automated system, they're going to get flagged immediately. It's far better to proactively report these things and accept a slight reduction in your benefit if necessary than to have the system discover them on its own and potentially create an overpayment situation that you'd have to pay back. Third, if you're receiving SSDI and you've been engaging in any work activity, even if it's below the substantial gainful activity threshold, document everything meticulously. Keep records of your hours worked, your wages earned, and any work-related expenses you incur. The automated verification system is going to be pulling wage data directly from the IRS and from state employment databases, and you want to be able to explain and contextualize any income that shows up in your file. Remember that SSDI has provisions that allow you to work within certain limits without losing your benefits, but you need to be able to demonstrate that you're staying within those limits. Looking ahead to what happens after December 6th, there are really three possible scenarios. In the first scenario, the administration approves all of these changes and announces that they'll be implemented starting with January 2025 payments. If this happens, you should expect to receive detailed written communication from the Social Security Administration by mid-December, explaining exactly how the changes will affect you personally. This communication should include your new payment date if it's changing, information about any transition payments you might receive, and details about how the new verification system will work. In the second scenario, the administration approves some changes, but not others, or approves changes with a delayed implementation timeline. This might mean that the payment schedule changes don't happen until March or April, giving them more time to coordinate with banks and state agencies. Or it might mean that the automated verification system gets approved, but won't be fully operational until later in 2025. In this scenario, you'd still receive communication from the administration, but it would include information about the phased rollout and what you should expect in the coming months. In the third scenario, the administration decides that these changes need more evaluation and pushes the entire review back to the next quarterly cycle. This would mean that everything continues operating under the current system for at least another few months while they gather more data and refine their proposals. Honestly, this is probably the least likely scenario given how much work has already gone into preparing these changes, but it's still possible if they identify significant technical or logistical challenges that need to be addressed first. Regardless of which scenario plays out, the key thing to understand is that these kinds of systemic changes don't happen very often. The Social Security Administration is a massive bureaucracy that generally moves very slowly and very carefully. So when they're actively considering changes of this magnitude, it's worth paying attention. These aren't minor tweaks to forms or slight adjustments to eligibility criteria. These are fundamental changes to how and when benefits are delivered and how beneficiary information is verified and maintained.